thank you. Thank you. What just happened there? What did we just do? I mean, I got up here. This is the first talk of the day, and you all stood up and clapped. That is weird, right? I mean, not bad. I feel really good right now, but it's weird, right? I mean, you all just sat in your chairs, got a little comfy, and then you got right back up, effort, and then you whacked your hands into each other to make noise, and have you noticed it actually kind of hurts a little when you do that? Like, it would have been easier to just keep sitting there and not smack your hands together. So why did we all just do that? Well, it's ritual. It's a whole bunch of rituals, really, and we have 45 minutes together to figure it all out. So why did we just do that, and what did it get us? Because I think it got us some important things. I think it brought us closer together when we did that. I think it's part of why Codegarden is such a distinctive conference, and I think it's a tool we can use to build a better world. And I think it's a tool we need to understand to protect against attempts to misuse it. And I'm not alone in thinking these things, so let's talk about it. But first, hey, I'm Jason. If you want to get to know me, find me after the talk. I'm around. But right now, the important thing I need you to know is that I have been a manager and a teacher for much of my career, and that's how I have come to approach ritual. It's one of the forces that takes a collection of people and turns them into a group, like a team or a class. And right now, I'm thinking about it at work a lot more than I have ever before. Because at the start of the year, I joined Codegarden. No, I joined Codegarden yesterday. Codepath, an education nonprofit in the US that's building a world where every college student in the country has access to good computer science education. And there's a lot to that, but one of the big pieces is that we develop and teach courses that supplement the college curriculum. And my job in all this, a big piece of that job, is to make sure those classes actually work. So education research tells us that students who feel connected to their classmates are going to do better. But a lot of our classes are online with hundreds of students who all go to different schools. So it's real easy for them to feel disconnected from each other. And instead of just focusing on improving our lesson plans and teaching the most important topics, one of the big things I've been looking at is how do we connect those students to each other? So I've been looking at ritual. And when I started learning about it, I don't think I would have called what I was studying ritual, because I was looking at team-building activities and agile ceremonies and lesson structures and class interactives. All of these different scripts people have built to create activities that bring people together in a group toward a goal. But while I was studying them, I had this feeling like I'd seen some of them in other places. Some of these things we were doing felt kind of connected to sports. Some of them felt kind of connected to religion. A lot of them felt interconnected to each other. And I am a really big nerd, so when I see a pattern, I go looking to see if someone's researched it. And I found a lot of these patterns coming together in the research in the broad umbrella of ritual. So let's start out by looking at what the research says about ritual. So ritual is currently an active area of research in many social sciences, and this 2018 paper is an excellent starting place. It pulls together a wide collection of past research into a framework, and I don't expect you to read the abstract on that slide, it's okay. But these authors define ritual as predefined sequences characterized by rigidity, formality, and repetition that are embedded in a larger system of symbolism and meaning, but contain elements that lack direct instrumental purpose. And if your eyes are glazing over, yeah, that's a lot. That's a huge number of words to say something. So at the risk of making it a little less precise, I want to see if I can make that a little easier to follow. So our authors break the definition into 3 parts in the original paper. First, predefined sequences characterized by rigidity, formality, and repetition. So I like to call these scripted behaviors, situations where people carry out a set of actions as though they're following directions in a script the exact same way every time. Then they have to be embedded in a larger system of symbolism and meaning. So this is about the state of mind of the person who's carrying out the ritual. Carrying out the actions has to mean something to them. Just going through a set of actions without a sense of meaning, that's not a ritual. So we could say that's in a meaningful context. Finally, they need to contain elements that lack direct instrumental purpose. And that's a great phrase. But what that really just means is that there's something in the script of the ritual that isn't directly doing a task. So if I say that to open a door, you grip the handle and turn it and then pull it open, that is not a ritual. That is a set of instructions. But if I tell you that the way we open doors around here, we tap the handle 3 times before we do that, now there's something without a direct purpose. Now we could have a ritual element. So rituals include steps that aren't directly needed. And if we put that all back together, a ritual is scripted behaviors in a meaningful context that include steps that aren't directly needed. Now the paper goes on and adds one more bit of important context, which is that all 3 of these things will be present, but they might be stronger or weaker. So, for example, a real common ritual is saying grace before meals. And even though someone might never say the same thing twice, there's not specific words you have to use, they always say something with about the same meaning, and there is a meaningful context which stays the same, giving thanks, and there are steps that are not directly needed because it is actually possible to feel gratitude for food without doing any of that. So the scripting piece is weak, but it's still a ritual. Now, I like this definition because it's flexible. It makes it easy to see the ways in which rituals exist across all the different aspects of our lives. But honestly, the goal here isn't just being able to point at things we're doing and go, oh, ritual! No, we're here to talk about how to use rituals. And along the way, I want to learn some skills that help us use them well. So, let's learn a new ritual. Here's what we're going to do. Take a moment and read the instructions. All right. 1, stand up. 2, high five your neighbor. 3, high five your other neighbor. 4, high five yourself. 5, all together, we rock. And now we can sit down. Good practice. Great job, everybody. But was that a ritual? Kind of. That was a set of scripted interactions, and I will acknowledge it wasn't strictly necessary, but it's not entirely a ritual yet. We could make it a ritual together, and maybe we will. Because that's the first rule of creating rituals for a group. I can't make a ritual. You can't make a ritual either, but we can make a ritual. So let's give that one more try. This time I'm just going to say the numbers, and again, when you're ready, give me the sign. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We rock! Woo! We've done it a second time, and that brings it a little closer to a ritual. But why? Because it's not enough for a sequence to be defined. To be ritual, it has to be repeated. We are attuned to repetition. We recognize patterns, and we want to understand why they happen. So when we're creating a ritual, it's not enough to do something once. We need to repeat it so that that pattern becomes familiar to us. And we also need to understand what the ritual is for. It needs a meaningful context. But don't let that make it sound hard. It can be so easy. I mentioned before, there's a lot of active research into rituals right now, and that research isn't just about looking at rituals out in the world and trying to understand them. We can We do create rituals and try to measure what their impact is. And one of my favorite stories about this comes from a study carried out with children in after-school programs. In the study, each child was given either a green or a yellow wristband to wear while they were in the program. And they were told that the wristband meant that they were in the yellow group, or the green group, and that each group would learn a special way to use the objects they were given. The children were given some beads to make necklaces and told, "We're going to play with these beads in a special way, the way the green group does it." And then the students were allowed to make necklaces however they wanted for 10 minutes. And when the session was over, the adult leader praised them. "You did it the way the green group does it. Good job." The yellow group got exactly the same treatment. But in one of these classes, the students in one group got a bit more instruction. They got shown a ritual for making necklaces instead. We take the star bead, and we touch it to our heads, and we put it on the string. Then we take the square bead, or the kiwi bead, and we clap 3 times, and then we put it on the string. And they did that together, selecting the same beads as a group, and either touching them to their heads or clapping before adding each one. And they did that 6 times over the course of 2 weeks. And that was enough to create a ritual with observable effects. And we'll come back to those effects later because they are interesting in their own right. But right now, I just want to focus on what the researchers did. There was so little. Everything was exactly the same, except instead of letting the kids do whatever they wanted, they gave them a script. And because the script included weird steps, it was set up to be a ritual script. The simple acts of touching beads to their heads and clapping together was enough to measurably change relationships between this group of random kids more than in the equivalent groups who just played with the same set of beads together and got told they were a group. So once we understand how simple rituals can be, we can start looking for them around us. If you want to tell somebody you appreciated their contribution to Umbraco, you could, I guess, just say thanks. But if you're here in person, you are probably going to give them a high five. You're probably going to say something like, "High five, you rock." You might even say that online where, unless the internet has advanced in ways I'm not familiar with, you cannot actually high five people. It's a ritual in our community for telling somebody that they're appreciated. And we know it didn't start out that way. Originally, it was a joke somebody was making to illustrate how to get over the stereotypical Danish reservedness and express some enthusiasm about your coworkers. So instead of being like, you could work it up to like, "Hi, good to see you." Or all the way up to, "High five, you rock." And we did. We started doing it. It became a thing we do. So just like they told the kids in the study, this is the way the green group plays with beads, we tell new Umbracians, we did it at the opening ceremony, this is the way we appreciate people in Umbraco. So how's it do against the definition? Well, is it a scripted behavior? Check. We do basically the same thing every time, sometimes adjusting it a little for the medium we're using. Does it have a context? Check. We are using it to tell someone else we appreciate them. And does it include steps that are not strictly necessary? Check. We could actually say anything to show appreciation, but we use the same actions and phrases every time. It's a ritual. Or what about if I say, "See? See? Okay, that sure seems like a ritual. We've got a script, and someone watching cannot exactly say why we're doing that, but interestingly, the context there is a little weaker. That isn't a ritual we're using to accomplish anything in particular, but there is still context. If you heard someone call out "see" while you were in the shopping mall, I bet you wouldn't respond. The call and response helps remind us that we're here in a place where the Umbraco community is strongly present. It reminds us that this space, this is ours. Even practical things like signaling how an event runs can turn into a ritual. Lots of conferences do some kind of announcement when it's time to find your seats. But imagine how you'd feel if somebody here said, "You have 5 minutes until the next talks are starting," over the PA, instead of playing music to tell you when to find your seat. Or if you've been coming to Codegarden for a few years, you might have felt a little bit weird this year when the Red Hot Chili Peppers started playing instead of Hooked on a Feeling. That is, by the way, the name of the Ooga Chaka song. I know, it's older than most of us. Now, I'm sure a lot of us weren't bothered by the change. There's lots of ways to signal time. Maybe you're even happy that we picked a more recent song. But I bet there's a lot of people out there, like me, who felt just a little uneasy, like some little thing that makes this experience Codegarden-y was missing. And if you were having that experience, I would like to inform you that hearing Bjorn Skifs chant at you over the PA system had become a ritual for you. All right, so while we're all hooked on thinking about our feelings, I want to take a moment to move. We all got up in time for the first talk. We are here and awake and paying attention, and we deserve a 5 up. So show me your hands when you're ready. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. We rock. We do rock. And we've got some other feelings too. How did it feel for you to do that? Did it feel fun? Did it feel awkward? Did you feel like you're getting better at it? Did it make you feel anything about the people you're doing it with? And if you didn't do it, and I saw some people didn't do it, and I'm not going to call out names, how did you feel when everybody else did? And if you did do it, and you noticed somebody else not doing it, how did that make you feel? And why all this talk about feelings? Well, when we defined rituals, we said it was important that rituals have a context. They need to be embedded in a system of symbolism and meaning. And you might start to think that the point of a ritual is to achieve something, looking at some of our examples. But there's actually lots of ways to achieve things without any ritual at all. So in The Ritual Effect, social psychologist Michael Norton approaches ritual from a different angle. He started his research as a postdoc in behavioral economics at MIT's Sloan School of Management. And as economics researchers do, he focused his research firmly on individuals, not groups. And he described his approach as using the yardstick of behavioral economics. If you have a goal, is this a foolish or wise use of your time? In the case of a ritual, if you want to feel differently, is carrying out that ritual foolish or wise? He started looking at rituals as a tool people could use in their own lives. And in that way of looking at them, he ended up contrasting research on rituals with research into habits. Now, at first glance, a habit seems a lot like a ritual, a set of actions carried out more or less the same way every time. And if we want to accomplish something regularly, habits are pretty amazing. And you can go read about how to put them to work in your life. I have coworkers who swear by books like The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits as tools for changing their behavior. And if your goal is to change something about your behavior, the research into habits is amazing. But I'm not going to talk about it, because a ritual is not a habit. A habit is a scripted action. But as we saw, that's only part of what it takes for something to be a ritual. A ritual requires a mental context. The strength of a habit is that often we can do it without any mental effort at all. A ritual carried out without thinking is not a ritual. Habits give us patterns that we can carry out without the effort of figuring out what to do. But rituals are a different sort of pattern. Rituals give us patterns that help connect us to different emotional states. The point of a ritual is to feel. And that means the point of a group ritual is to feel together. And when we start to look at it this way, there are a lot of rituals in our cultures and our lives. Take the New Year. Americans tune in to watch a giant ball of light bulbs slowly descend on television. My Sicilian grandmother would make sure everybody in the house had at least a little bit of money in their pocket to start the new year in good fortune. I'm told that around here, there's a comedy sketch that plays on TV every year, which sounds a lot more entertaining than a ball filled with light bulbs. But this is a moment we've decided is important. It's the turning of one year into the next. And so we celebrate it by doing things that connect it with all the past new years we've experienced. We mark our own personal years as well, with birthday celebrations. And what image does that call up in your mind? For me, it's blowing out candles on cakes when I was a kid and phone calls with all of my relatives as an adult. We measure the passage of time by coming back to the same thing once each year. And these time-keeping rituals connect us to our own history, and they connect us to the people we share them with. We mark other important traditions with rituals too, or transitions rather. My brother is getting married later this year, and I have some idea of what's going to happen because I am familiar with the ritual of a wedding. A friend's kid is graduating college this month, and when they do, or when they did, I expect their day is going to be or have been a lot like mine was, with the mortarboard hat and the walking across a stage to be given a diploma. Someday, I hope a very long time from now, there is going to be a funeral remembering me, and I am not going to be an active participant in that one, but I still know what it's going to be like. I've been through a few of those too. Rituals help us to feel. So if habits are tools for behavioral change, and rituals are tools that help us access our feelings, what am I doing sitting up here talking about rituals? This is a software conference. We want to be more effective. That's all about what we do, not what we feel, right? Of course, that argument has giant holes in it. This is Codegarden. Umbraco got where it is by being the friendly CMS. I don't think I need to convince this room that remembering that software is built by humans is a strategic advantage, because those behaviors we want to improve, well, those are behaviors from humans, and humans feel. So if this were a more uptight business conference, maybe I'd need to present some statistics right now about by how paying attention to how the humans on your team feel, you will achieve a higher ROI and hit your KPIs and capture more market value. No. I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that here. I'm just going to remind you that we're humans. We all know the power of working together in a way where we feel like we're a team. And rituals help us build that kind of collaboration. So let's take a moment right now and give ourselves a 5 up for being the kind of community that cares about how people feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. We rock! So I'm sure you've all noticed that the 5 up is a ritual for celebrating all of us together. All of us here can feel more like we're part of the Umbraco community. One group with a common goal to build great things on the web. But what else does ritual look like in the workplace? Do real software teams use rituals in their day-to-day work? Of course we do. So let's break down a few real-world examples. This is from a team I worked on that used sprints and story points to plan our work. And the knowledge about our system, like in so many places, was spread across a 5-person team, so we needed to come together to assign points to our tasks before we could plan our sprints. So we'd have one person read the task out loud, that was usually me with my loud voice, and everyone would think about how many points to assign. And when people had a number, they would hold up their closed fist, and when everybody's hands were up, someone would count down from 3, and everyone would show a number of fingers for their vote. Then, whoever had the lowest number and whoever had the highest number would each explain why they voted the way they did. And everybody would vote again, and if we didn't get to a consensus within about 3 rounds, we'd just take the highest number and move on. Now, if you've done story points, you might recognize this overall method. That simultaneous voting is really common across many teams. I think it's formally called wideband Delphi or something. But the ritual elements came in as the team decided how they liked to do it. People got attached to how they would reveal their counts. A lot of the time, we'd have somebody joining our team by video call, so I suggested we try using an online system. The team was not into that. We held up hands in front of our camera, we counted fingers, and that was how we did it. And I'm not sure that the result was notably more accurate than other story point planning methods, but it had some advantages. People looked forward to the planning meeting. And because of the ritual of the top and bottom voters arguing their points, the team was used to talking about why they chose what they did. And when it came time to talk about the work later, nobody on the team felt like the sizes of the tasks had been forced on them. So I can't say the result of the process was more accurate than any other process, but I can say the team was happier and more comfortable with it. And the move to remote work has also created a need for new rituals. My current team is spread across 4 time zones in 3 countries, so of course, all of our meetings happen online. And one of the challenges of an online meeting is making it clear when it's done without just hanging up on everybody. So before I joined the team's leader, Liz, tried to solve this problem by introducing a small new practice. When the meeting was about to end, she'd say something like, "And we'll all head out in 3, 2, 1, and then she'd disconnect. Everybody on the video call would hold up their fingers and count down at the same time, and then we'd all disconnect together, so we were all leaving at once. It turned the end of the meeting from a moment of awkwardness into this tiny little moment of team cohesion. It worked. But one person with a quirky way of ending meetings is not a ritual. It became a ritual when she shared it with the team and invited other people to be the ones to close out the meetings. So now, when it's time to end, whoever is leading any meeting might ask anybody on the call to close us out. And on our team, we know that means saying a couple of words, reminding the team of what we're doing, then counting down the end of the meeting for everyone to leave together. It reminds us that we're one team, even as we're stepping out of that context where we're together into the rest of our day where we're all going to be working alone, independently. And it also can help illustrate how part of the strength of a ritual is how we recognize it even when things go a little weird. Because after one team meeting, we had a lot of announcements, a lot of my boss talking, and not much chance to hear from anybody else, all the individuals in the team. So we picked one person who had been quiet up to that point to close us out and get at least one more voice in the room. That was Mario. Mario unmuted and started to talk, and everyone quickly realized we couldn't hear him. Mario's mic was not working. And there's this moment while we all wondered how we're going to handle it. Would we wait for him to fix it? Would we just leave without doing our thing? Would we call on someone else? But Mario had an idea. He closed the meeting without a word. People sent him messages for the rest of the week complimenting him on his charade skills. The ritual did its thing, even though it had been silenced. And this shows up in the research on rituals. People who have been in a group for longer and are comfortable with its rituals are more comfortable making little changes that don't affect the substance of the ritual, or even changes they think might improve it. While newer group members who are feeling more uncertain follow the script more precisely. So rituals change over time, and one of the forces guiding that change is how much each person feels like they have the power to alter the ritual. And that power to alter rituals is really powerful. The New England Patriots are an American football team. They play the weird sport that isn't rugby that we play on our side of the Atlantic. And one day in 2001, the team showed up for practice to find their coach, Bill Belichick, standing next to a hole he had dug in the field. The game the day before had been, well, it wasn't good. The team took their loss hard. They didn't feel capable. And Belichick held up a ball. This is the ball from the game yesterday. And once everyone had a moment to let that sink in, he continued. And this is what I think of it. He dropped it in the hole and started shoveling dirt on it. The team watched while he filled the hole entirely back in. That game's over. We're burying it and moving on. And this has become a famous story because it worked. The team turned around a season that had started off real badly and went on to win the championship that year. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, sports coaches are weird. We would never do something like that in software. But were you paying attention at the opening keynote? We did! When the team realized Umbraco version 5 wasn't taking the project in the right direction, they made a call to kill it. But how do you kill open source software? The code's out there, somebody could fork it. And there's a lot of work to abandon. There's a lot of feelings. Feelings? This called for ritual. The team had a gravestone made and brought it to Codegarden in 2012 and invited the community to pay our respects with flowers. It's a vivid image. It's serious. It's silly. And like Belichick's game, we buried it and we moved on. So a lot of rituals are for making teams feel like teams. But these rituals, they were doing something else. They were helping people work through disappointment. They were helping people acknowledge failure without letting it set the future tone. And when we need to do things like that, a lot of the time, we need to look to our larger culture that we're in for the rituals we need and then adapt them with a little bit of a twist. So how do we do that? How do we create and adapt ritual? Well, I do have some tools. So let's start by practicing our 5-up ritual, and then I'm going to take off the cover a little and peek at how it works. 1, 2, 3, 4. We rock! So one tool I've used in our new ritual is the adaptation that we were just talking about. 5-up is based on 2 things: a broad collection of cultural rituals around shared cheers, and our community's own high five, you rock. I use cheers because I know that a shared cheer is a kind of ritual that's fast and easy to learn, and doing something together is one of the best ways to make people feel like part of the same group. And I use the high five because one of the easiest ways to connect a ritual to a group is to have an obvious connection to something that group already does, whether that's another ritual or something else important to them. Which brings us to another tool. You have to know the group. You are never going to make a generic ritual. That's not how rituals work. You're trying to help create a ritual in a group. So you have to start with a clear idea of who this ritual is for. You also need to know what this ritual is for, why it exists. If there isn't a clear circumstance for doing the ritual, then you can't create the mental context. But you don't have to explain everything, and in fact, you shouldn't. You also need those steps that are part of the ritual, but don't seem to serve a direct purpose. In the 5-up ritual, the group is obvious. It's the Umbraco community, and especially those of us that are diehard enough to be here at Codegarden first thing in the morning. And I chose the why deliberately. At Codegarden, we do a great job of celebrating the amazing people around us, but I wanted a celebration that reminds each of us that we're part of that amazing group. But a celebration where you celebrate yourself didn't feel Umbracian to me, so I wanted a ritual that celebrates us and reminds you that you're part of us. Now, the next tool in the toolkit is a little less obvious, but it's helpful for building rituals that can spread. You want to create rituals that let observers turn into participants. Nobody needs to explain high five, you rock after they've seen it a few times. Somebody can just start doing it after watching, and now they're participants in the ritual too. 5-up is a bit more complicated, partially because I made it to be a demo, but I bet somebody who joined the talk late has picked up what we're doing. The last of these key tools is repetition. Repetition anchors things in our minds. Repetition turns something from a one-off event into a pattern. And as Adam Neely, noted jazz nerd, loves to say, repetition legitimizes. So we do it over again. And since repetition legitimizes, 1, 2, 3, 4, we rock! I have to be honest, it feels really good to lead a group like that. There's an energy, there's a togetherness. You might be feeling it too. It's likely many of you are. And in the experiment with the children and the beads, the researchers were measuring how strongly the kids felt like they were in a group with the other kids who had been assigned the same color. The children who did the ritual together showed more signs of feeling connected to their group than the ones who just played together, even though all the groups spent exactly the same amount of time together. They focused more on showing their work to the other members of their group. They thought the other members of their group should be the ones picked for special privileges in the class. And they started paying more attention to who was in their group and who wasn't. Rituals don't just make people feel more connected. They also create a division between an in-group and an out-group. And this is where some of the trouble can start. Remember when we were practicing the 5-up ritual and I asked you how you felt about the people who weren't participating? I suspect some of you felt a little negative. Why is that person still sitting? We're all doing something kind of silly. Are they too good for it? Well, that's normal. The ritual is creating an us, and that means the people not in it, maybe they're a them. And I've been lightly encouraging that too. I keep talking about how great the people here are. We got up early. We came for the first talk. I've been complimenting us in ways that lightly imply that we're better than everyone else. And I've been doing it lightly because I do not actually want us to come out of this talk hating the people who are getting some extra sleep. I just want us to feel a little bit of how that group pride can start to shift towards othering. But imagine if I did want you to hate them. I could act differently, and I think you have seen how I would act out in the world. When we build an in-group with ritual, we need to be careful about how we think about the out-group. Have you ever worked with a team of devs who have each other's backs but see the sales team as their enemies? Worse, have you ever met a team that see themselves as a strong community, but their end users as those idiots they have to put up with? In-groups and out-groups. And the result is people acting with less empathy than they really should. And this has serious consequences. People want to be part of a group. People probably need to be part of a group. And rituals are one way to create a group and bring it together. But there's another way. And it works. And it's hate. When we come together in rituals, we bring ourselves closer to each other, and we need to be careful not to push other people away. But when we focus on hating the same people, then we push them away, and as a side effect, we end up closer together. Hate also builds community. It's just not a community I want. There are a lot of hate groups in the world right now. And I see a lot of them at home in the US where they have a lot of power right now, but I see a lot of them around Europe too, and everywhere really. There are always people who come together through hate, but right now I feel like they're having a particularly strong moment. But community can help fight hate too. Hate groups recruit people by looking for people who don't have a community, people who feel isolated and disconnected. And we've been talking about the power of shared rituals to make people feel connected. It's not a far stretch to say that being in a group like this one, a group where we help other people out and we welcome newcomers to join us, it's not a far stretch to say that being here makes it harder to fall for that hate. But to do that, we need to pay attention. We need to look at the ways in which sometimes we let our groups use hate instead of caring. It's easy to recognize the dynamic when someone is saying, those people are the problem with the world today. But what about when we're talking about programming and someone starts talking about how stupid and awful PHP is? I mean, PHP has some really weird design decisions, and there are valid criticisms, but it's clearly an effective language for some situations. There's a lot of PHP code out there running some very important sites, and I bet there are people in this room who write production PHP. Lots of us use different tech stacks depending on the project. So when we make jokes about those people who use that other language, we bring our group together through hate. And we're telling those people who might also be in that other group that they need to hide that part of themselves to be here. And I think every group uses both of these tools sometimes. Ritual and other positive associations to bring the in-group together. Hate and mockery to push the out-group away. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I think we need to learn to use ritual well. Because community matters. But when we build it through exclusion, we're building a more fragile sort of community. But it's true, a lot of us have picked up effective techniques for using hate to bring people together, even without meaning to. If we just stop using them, we're undoing some of the glue that holds our group together. We need to switch to new techniques that bring people together in the positive ways we want, and that make it easier for us to invite people into the in-group. A group is about feelings. If you get rid of all the feeling, you don't really have a group. So if you want to get rid of the hate, you need another feeling. And that brings me back to why I'm looking at ritual in my classroom. I am working with students who want to work in tech in the middle of the toughest job market any of us have lived through. And I need those students to feel like a team. Their support of each other is going to make the biggest difference in how they fare in their careers. And I know a really, really easy way to bring them together. I've seen other teachers do it. Those folks who are hiring, they don't care. They just want to weed you out. And that's why we've got to learn how to play their rigged game together. It's us versus the industry. But that's the industry they're trying to join. Is bonding over shared anger going to help them stay connected when one of them finally makes it in? If they do stay connected, will that make it harder for them to connect with their new teams? When I see instructors doing this, I want to tell them to stop, but what I need to do is give them a way to stop, to find new ways of engaging with their students that are based on coming together instead of pushing apart. In my classroom, we're careful about the rituals we build. We have an end-of-class ritual where we encourage everyone in the class to share something they learned or accomplished. And even though we never explicitly call for it, a lot of the students choose to share shout-outs for the other students and TAs who helped them during class. It's a regular part of the session, and it comes right after an hour of group work that can be the most challenging part of the class, as students work in small groups on problems that do challenge them. And we open every class by inviting students to speak as well. Both of these rituals exist to help break the cultural expectation that a classroom is non-interactive, a place where teachers speak and students listen passively. They also create another kind of continuity. Because they exist across the courses and classrooms in the programs we run, students taking their second or third class with us start to expect these aspects of how we come together. They create a connection between the different classes and build a feeling that all of these courses are part of one experience. And it's a lot of work to create positive ritual. You need to build commonality instead of focusing on a common enemy. And in the grand scheme of things, maybe feeling like it's us against the world isn't always bad. But can you blame me for being nervous? While I'm here, my friends back at home are posting about people being deported. I'm queer. I'm Jewish. There are a lot of stories about people deciding that people like me are the problem in their communities and solving that problem with violence. And the people promoting those feelings have been very good at using rituals to engage emotions toward hate. So if you've been reluctant to participate in my silly little ritual, I don't blame you. I think a lot of us are afraid of letting ourselves join that kind of group emotion because we see other people getting carried off to dangerous places. We see the line that connects football hooligans with anti-immigrant mobs. People worked into an emotional frenzy. And here I am talking about how to build ritual at a time like this. At a time like this. How can I not talk about it? Because ritual is a tool for shaping group emotions. And so I think it's fundamental to how our species has been so successful. We can't step back from it just because other people have found ways to use it for evil. Ritual taps into one of our deepest pieces of self-identity, the idea of people like us. And shaping who we see as people like us is central to shaping the kind of world we want to live in. Seth Godin had a great phrase for it in his essay, "People like us do things like this." He wasn't talking about ritual, though. He was talking about culture. The idea that what's possible in your worldview is defined by who you see yourself as. Now, Godin isn't a social scientist. He isn't a researcher, but he works in a field that carries out a lot of research around changing human beliefs. He's a marketer. He's in the business of getting people to change their behavior, maybe to use a certain product, maybe to give to a certain cause. And his advice for convincing people is to show them that people like us do this. Find the us you're trying to reach and figure out how what you've got fits into their sense of self. But ritual is more powerful than that. Let's go back to that after-school program with the colored armbands. Every single group of kids got told, this is the way our group plays with beads. But only one group got directions on what that way was. And that group was the one that acted the most like a distinctive group. So I think we need to turn Seth Godin's idea sideways. It is true that people like us do things like this. But what we're learning is that people who do things like this are like us. Ritual creates groups, which means that when we build rituals to be open and invite others into them, we are extending an invitation. You can be like us, or even you can be part of us. And that's one of the things I love about Codegarden and Umbraco. We've been trying to open the door to telling more people you can be part of us. We'll take a newcomer and high-five them and tell them they rock when they do something in line with our community. And for us, that means building things and sharing them to make all the work we do on the web easier. So we can't just avoid ritual. We need to build more positive rituals, more behaviors that connect people together into those groups that actually make things better. And there are so many little things you can look at when you're doing this. Does this ritual presume everyone is able-bodied? Sorry for making you stand. Does it presume everyone enjoys the same kinds of things? Does it ask people to profess a belief they might not hold? All of these are things that make it impossible for some people to join the ritual, and harder to join the group that does it. But above everything, I think there's one thing to look at. Do the people that come together using this ritual use the ritual to keep people out or to bring people in? There's a phrase from the research paper about that experiment with the kids and the beads that gives me a lot of hope. The researchers wrote, "We lack evidence for how ritual participation might lead to outgroup biases, hostility, or even prejudice." What does that mean? Well, these researchers were actively studying how their ritual experiment influenced awareness of who was in the in-group and who was in the out-group. They knew the history of human group dynamics. They were looking to see if their experiment might shed light on where that hostility toward the other creeps in. But it didn't. The kids were well aware of what group they were in, showed clear signs of feeling positive toward their group, but it didn't create a corresponding negativity. We don't need to hate others to like each other. It's not zero-sum. So back to that question I asked at the very beginning. Why did we all stand up and clap before the talk even began? Well, because applause, and especially the standing ovation, is a ritual for showing appreciation in the broad culture we're part of. Because we have built a new ritual around it, moving it to the front of talks as a way of communicating that we are welcoming our speakers and want to hear from them. Because people like us do things like this. And where do those rituals come from? Well, as Kermit the Frog once said, sang, somebody thought of that, and someone believed it. The standing ovation ritual. Well, it's less than 3 years old. Carla introduced it at Codegarden 2023, but it fit with who we are, and now it's part of our culture. We're the friendly CMS. We're the weird pocket of the web dev world where competing agencies are still friends. And I think the weird and the friendly and the ritual are all interconnected. We are the community that remembers that all of this technology is built by and for people. And I appreciate that. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you appreciate each other. And I think we might have something we can do to show that appreciation. You really do.